Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the video. We're going to be further discussing resolutiongate. Yes, we can't get away from that just quite yet, I'm afraid. Microsoft Studios VP Phil Spencer has been, of course, defending the Xbox One. And he's pretty much leading with the statement, play the games, not the resolution. And so we're going to be discussing that in just a moment. Now, I'm pretty sure most of us are aware of the arguments by now. The basic premise is that the PlayStation 4 is playing quite a few of the cross-platform titles, in other words, ones available on the PS4 and the Xbox One, at a higher resolution. How much higher? Well, it depends upon the game. Call of Duty, for example, is running at 1080p versus 720, Battlefield 4, 900p versus 720p, and so on and so forth. So Phil Spencer begins by saying, and I quote, "Go look at the games, go play the games and tell us what you think about what they look. Right now, gamers don't have the games to play. They can't walk into the local store and play the games. So it really doesn't surprise me they're going to focus on the specs that they can. I don't criticize anyone for doing it. In the end, we play the games, not the resolution." He adds, "In absence of getting my own Xbox One or PlayStation 4 games, I'm going to focus on the meme of the day, which happens to be resolutiongate. But I think it'll blow over as people go play the games." Now, I know what you're all thinking, out of quote, of course. You're thinking, well, yeah, but the problem is, people are concerned because they're basically plonking down a good portion of the cash, particularly when you start adding in the cost of games, the cost of extra controllers if, you're not just playing by yourself, and so on, and all the other bits and bobs that go with a new console launch. It's not just something that people are going to be like, I'm sure it's fine. So, generally speaking, a lot of people, and I'm judging purely by the messages I'm getting back from fans and so on, people want the best system they can, the best looking system and so on, which is kind of difficult to blame them. So, doesn't it follow that there is a concern from him that the Xbox One is less powerful and therefore people are going to judge it on that 3 months, 6 months after launch? Well, he has a quote for this. "Power is a subjective term. We all look at the capabilities we put into the box, our investment in the cloud, Connect, and all-in-one entertainment, and our investment in the operating system for fast task switching. We think we've built a very powerful system, and I don't think there's any one vector of power that you could focus on and say, we win because this number is bigger than that number. It's like a car. Is it horsepower? Is it torque? There's a bunch of other things that you go look at what it's capable of. Our proposition with the Xbox One starts with the games. We've got a great launch lineup of over 20 games. We've got great franchises, great third-party relationships, and we've built a system that natively understands you and your entertainment. I think in the long run, our hope and our bet is that the power will play out and show people that everything they've learned about gaming on the 360 can now augment everything they're doing on their television." And then, to summarize and finalize, should I say, he adds, "Look at the high-end PC games right now. If you're going to look at the screen resolution and frame rate, you'd be a PC gamer because you could spend $800 on a video card and put it in. I've built those rigs, and I can play those games, and I understand that, but it doesn't mean that the best games are there. It doesn't mean that it's all the best all-in-one experience," end quote. Yeah, I have a couple of issues with this. Now, I agree with the sentiment in some respects, and this has been something I've been very vocal of, right? I agree that the games are the most important thing. I'm personally getting a PlayStation 4 on launch. I'm still 50-50 on the Xbox One, if I'm totally honest, although it's not to do with the graphics. It's all about the games, right? That's just a given. The resolution, if the games suck, I'm not going to buy the console. I'm not going to plonk down my money because, well, it's a quite simple case of I want to actually enjoy the bloody thing. Furthermore, if you consider that the Xbox One's launch lineup is actually very strong, I'd probably give it the edge over the PlayStation 4. Not by much, but I'd say that the PS4 kind of had a few major blows. I was very disappointed that Infamous wasn't going to be a launch title. I understand that, it's going to be a huge game and all of that, but for me I was a bit disappointed, although it does have Killzone, which is a great thing. I was a bit disappointed. The Xbox One does have titles like Rise, which I'm very, very thinking it looks very cool. I know some people are, it's too much QTE, which is understandable, but it does look a very interactive experience, and I'm quite liking the look of it. It also has Killer Instinct, and I must confess, the fact that the PS4 doesn't have a fighting game is somewhat of a downer for me, because I do like my fighters, and Killer Instinct looks really awesome, and so on. So that's one thing. But when you say power is subjective, I can't agree with it. It's like, look, I understand that one console may deal with one thing better. For example, you may have a situation where one system has an abundance of extra memory, or you may have a situation where, say, the system has a better GPU but an inferior CPU, or you may have a situation where one system is considerably easier to program for, but the other one has a lot of hidden potential. The problem is, if you just look at the Xbox One specs, it's very hard. If you just count the GPU, the memory, and the CPU definitely is slightly faster than the PS4. But here's the problem: is it really, when you start taking into account the PS4 can put a lot of that stuff onto compute? It's unknown right now. To say power is subjective, it's not really subjective. That's the thing. It's like, power is power at the end of the day. If a system has 1.840 flops, and this is something that really is prohibiting it. For example, let's say it has really crappy memory bandwidth, like the old GeForces of old. I've told you guys, some of you guys, this story before, but basically the old GeForce cards, they used SDR, which is single data RAM, which is considerably slower, of course, than DDR, which is pretty much twice the speed. And there was a variant with SDR, and there was a variant with DDR. And pretty much the DDR version just basically destroyed the SDR because the GPU wasn't faster. The actual processing unit wasn't faster, but it just wasn't able to get the data fast enough to it. So in other words, it was just constantly waiting around because it wasn't able to process data because there was no data there for it to process. The memory literally could not feed it. And this was an issue on multiple graphics cards. There were things that have improved this over time, including various culling methods to basically eliminate things that are being overdrawn and blah blah blah, but suffice to say. So yeah, generally speaking, power is power. Now, if you start in talking about the investments of the cloud and Kinect and so on, here's the issue. If you're playing Killer Instinct, or you're playing a title that Kinect doesn't particularly lend itself to, that doesn't really help you. The cloud, same thing. Some games just aren't really going to benefit from the cloud, and some developers are going to be a bit apprehensive to use, for example, cloud-based II. On the other hand, I do agree that some of the abilities of the Xbox One are very interesting. The operating system layout, despite the fact that it received some criticism early on, developers, well, not so much developers, but a lot of the forums I was looking at said it's too complicated, it's too convoluted, and so on. But I actually think it worked really well. It kind of doomed them to actually utilize DDR3, but I actually really like the theory behind it, because you've got a very robust, in theory, as long as it all works smoothly, it's going to be very complicated to manage and so on, but in theory at least, it allows you to have apps and everything else working simultaneously, and I do really like the Xbox One's UI. However, when you start talking about high-end PC games, obviously, PC, yes, you can have high resolution. And yes, he says that you can spend $800 on a video card, but here's the problems I've got with this. Firstly, you don't need to spend $800 on a video card to play in higher resolution 720p on most titles. Like, you can spend $200 to $300, and that's just a fact. It's not particularly difficult to ascertain that. You can just do a bit of Googling on a couple of the graphics cards that are available now, like for example the R9 290, the GTX 760 or 770s. Obviously a lot of this depends upon your budget, the CPU you've got in there, the games you're playing and so on. But it's not just high resolution. You're going to be going to have better texture quality and everything else. Of course, You can decide, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go out and buy a couple of GTX Titans and SLI the suckers, and by all means, if you've got the cash to do so, you've got the money burning the hole in your proverbial pocket, then you, of course, can do that, but it's not a prerequisite to enjoy high-definition gaming. I understand his sentiment, though. He's saying that basically if you want the best-looking graphics, yeah, PC gaming is the way forward, and of course it is. It's like, it's pretty obvious. It doesn't really take a genius, and I understand that. I'm not belittling what consoles are achieving because, well, they've only got a set budget, and it's not like when you're buying a console. Let's just round it up and say £400. It's not like every one of those pennies, every one of those cents go towards the internals of the components. There is also things such as them trying to recuperate the cost of research and development, the shipping costs, the manufacturing costs, everything costs. So, they've got to get the components relatively cheap to mass produce and so on. And that's why you either get situations like, I was doing a little bit of research a while back on the PlayStation 4's hard drives, and about SATA 2 and SATA 3 and so on, and there was confusion. They were like, well, SATA 2 to SATA 3, it's only a couple of bucks difference. Why did they go with SATA 2 parts and so on? And it's like, let's say it's just $1. Okay, it's not. It's more than that, but let's just use $1. But let's say you're shipping like 1 million PlayStations. Think how much money that's just saved you, right? It's a 1-to-1 ratio. But when you're talking $4 to $5, or $10, you're spending, you're saving like 10 million on just 1 million machines shipped, and they're going to be shipping a hell of a lot more than 1 million. Especially in the course of the console's life. I mean, imagine what it's going to be like if they've shipped like 50 million, and each of those are saving like $5 to $10. So it's kind of like a cost that needs to be constantly incremented. And I think, to be honest with you, if I were Microsoft, I would personally go with this message. I would say, you know what, the system maybe is not as powerful as maybe some people hoped, but we've created a system that is our perfect vision, and more to the point, look at the games on it. We've got some very fantastic exclusive games. Here's some previews of some other games. I'd try to cobble something together to, excite the viewers. I'd say we're giving away Killer Instinct. I would actually just give it away to everyone if I were them. Or that I'd do something else to really kind of sweeten the deal and say, look, we're giving away a really fantastic game of our experience as well, where, we've got everything else, and that's what we're selling the system as. And I'd also point out that, the more powerful console doesn't always win. I've said this before, but look at the original Game Boy. I mean, look at it. It's basically a black and white screen. Okay, it's tinted green, but that's only because of the type of screen that was used. But in reality, it was black and white. Yeah, it was just tinted green. You can look at like emulated pictures just to see what I mean. And it pretty much destroyed the competition. It destroyed the Lynx. It destroyed the Game Gear, despite the fact that they were significantly more powerful. They had color, for example, but the battery life was abysmal on them, and so on. Look at the PlayStation versus the N64. The N64 in theory was significantly more powerful, but it had some issues and so on. Look at the original Wii. Look how many consoles it sold. Yes, some of the games weren't. It didn't have really as many games on it as maybe we wanted, but my God, it absolutely destroyed the other two in terms of the sales figures. And the system was basically as powerful as a pocket calculator. And we could keep going like that, but there's not really much point. So I'd point those out as well. The most powerful system doesn't always win. Yes, we may have slightly lower resolution, but there you have it. Oh dear, I have a feeling that these debates are not going to end anytime soon, and I actually think it's going to become significantly worse. I think the battles are going to become a lot worse as the generation continues, because right now we're in this point where we don't really know that much. I mean, sure, I can tell you the specifications. I can tell you that the Jaguar runs at X. I can tell you that it's got this amount of memory bandwidth, and I can tell you the theoretical peak performance, and so on. But the bottom line is there are still a lot of unknown quantities. Like, we're not sure, for example, and I've said this before, but hey, why not reiterate? we're just not sure how, for example, compute is going to factor into it, especially for the Xbox One. We're not really sure just how cloud gaming is going to go. It's really early yet. What's going to happen in terms of bandwidth? I mean, there's analysis, or should I say, rumors and speculation and theories right now that sales figures for digital content is going to be well up there in a couple of years' time. At the moment, it's pretty insignificant for consoles. Obviously, for PC, it's already ridiculously high. Not many people buy the actual retail boxes, including myself, to be honest. But for consoles, it's pretty much most people just go out and buy the original hard copy. But there's rumours that it's probably going to go up to like 30 to 40, maybe even 50% within a couple of years of digital sales. I can tell you one thing with absolute certainty, though. I think that once the games start coming out and we start to actually enjoy the games and everyone starts to have lots of fun, there's still going to be arguments on the internet because that's just how it goes. So I don't really think that Phil is going to be right on this one. I'm not saying he's wrong in sentiment. I'm not saying that everyone should focus on, oh look, it's 720p versus 1080p. But I mean, I've been doing a little bit of looking around the internet, reading a couple of forums, just because I like to do that. I don't like to I like to go in with at least a few ideas of what other people are saying, because it gives me a good idea of what to tell you guys in terms of how I see the public perception, as well as my own opinions. I think it gives a more balanced view, rather than just saying things for myself, especially when it comes to these things. I mean, tech is different, but when it's like opinions, I like to at least say what my initial research is. And, judging from a few comments, I mean, there were a couple of quippy comments like, yeah, well, I can play the exact same game at higher resolution. So I just guess we're going to have to see. I have a feeling that Microsoft aren't going to get rid of this issue just like that, just because the systems are released. But perhaps I'm wrong. Who the hell knows? Anyway, regardless, I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.